My sin was great, your love was greater. What could separate us now? What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a wonderful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus.
Sure, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so then.
Are you building it all here? So it's like.
So.
What a wonderful name it is, the name of Jesus.
Said wait a little bit, like till like a majority of people are here, and then just start like you know to break the change.
Is that what mine says? That's the trip. That's so cool. I don't know my pockets because you know change is good. I need to get me agua.
Should I take my jacket off? Nah.
They already see ours, so probably.
Yeah. Plus, I'd be matching. Well, I don't think so. I was gonna say with the necklace and everything, I'd be matching Tate like exactly.
Write down the Bible verse that we use.
Has everybody could stand and like sing it with us? Or are we just like performing?
I don't know. It's probably said to like start as people come in, and there's no words. I'm guessing we're just performing it.
I wonder if
Mike.
Hey, you wanna play this for me?
Do you want to worship with us?
Got caught on my chakra. Okay. Just go.
Good morning, everyone. Is this on? Trying to say good morning. Say it again. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone.
Ready to do some worship.
Are you guys ready to do a quick worship song with us before we get going?
Of course you are.
Yeah, of course you are. All right, let's all stand up. Should I pray?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, real quick, I'm going to pray for us in our time. So please bow your heads with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this time this morning, that the opportunity that the DR team has to share, God. I pray that you would just help our time to go smoothly and that we would just really be able to convey what our trip was like serving you. Pray that you would just bless this time of worship too as well. Help us to just surrender our hearts into coming into your presence this morning. Amen. No, stand up.
No, Caleb, get back up.
Have a seat.
Good morning. Am I on? Oh, I am on. Okay. This is my 7th year leading a trip from Rapid City Christian. And if I had to describe this trip in one word, it'd be surprise. Because despite all the planning and after, a couple years, you sort of get a rhythm, like everything that could go wrong, you kind of prep for that. There really wasn't a way to prep for this, okay? We had a lot of surprises, and yet shockingly, in spite of all the surprises, we just had an awesome time together. And the pamphlet that you got, one of the things that you'll note is a lot of the kids talk about the great time they had with each other and the unity they felt in the team. And the verses that are chosen for our theme, they're right on the front there, Colossians chapter 3. But the last verse there, verse 14, it says, "Above all these, put on love, which binds things together in perfect unity." And that, I think, is a word that we would use to describe this team. We started out, of course, going to Haiti. And then due to political unrest in Haiti, we ended up going to the DR, which is the same island, so, really isn't that much of a difference. Then when we got there, we thought we were going to be teaching kids in Creole. And so we had Creole songs, and we had some French verses, and we were told 95% of the kids speak Creole. That was not true, okay? The younger kids pretty much all spoke Spanish, the adults spoke Creole, and so our first Bible lesson, we were speaking in English to be translated into Creole, to be translated into Spanish. It's really hard to hold a story through 3 translations, okay? But they did a good job. We adjusted on the fly, and that was our first kind of shock. So we just weren't expecting a lot of things. And then, of course, many of you know that coming back, we were supposed to be back on Saturday, and we didn't get here till Monday. And so we spent Easter together, which was actually a really, really good time. This team, they could have done a lot of whining about that, but I have to say they were the easiest group, other than the fact that feeding them is a little bit of a trial. I'm not sure how some of you parents afford some of these boys, because usually about 15 minutes after we finish eating, Ethan wants to know what's for lunch. So, yeah, that got a little stressful for me. Have some crackers. But it was a great trip. I am privileged to lead this team this year. I had some great help. Mr. Allsteel came along with us, Mr. Kazi came along with us, and Dr. Chris came along with us, which at the time when they all said they were going to go, I was like, whoa, that's a lot of guys, which was really good because, as you can see, we had a lot of guys on this team. And so it would have been me with a lot of boys in Miami, and that would have been wild. So I was very, very thankful that God knew ahead of time to prepare the exact people that we would need for this trip. But I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to let them kind of take it up from here. But as you know, we left on a snowy day. At the end of those 3 days that we had, this is the picture out the back door of the school the day we left. So we went from that to sweating it out. I think one day I calculated we had 30 gallons of water and 15 gallons of Gatorade, and that was one afternoon. And then they all came home and sucked out another 5 gallons. So quite a little change for us. But these kids, some of them have something to say. Others preferred not to practice their speech skills. And so they have put their statements, all of them have put their statements in that little handout for you to share kind of their highlights of their trips. But we're going to start with Tori, because her story kind of starts our trip.
Okay, so my adventure going to the DR started actually 2 days before we actually left for the trip. So I woke up Wednesday morning with probably the worst case of the flu that I have ever had, like 104-degree fever, like absolutely exhausted. And I was like, oh no, I am supposed to leave in 2 days for the DR. And so we were just praying, doing anything we could just to try and get me healthy, and woke up Thursday morning even worse. And so my dad helped me out to the car, and we went to the doctor to try and see if there's like anything we could do to kind of boost my health. And the doctor said that I shouldn't go. And that was super hard to hear with all of the preparation that we have been doing to learn that I was probably not going to be able to go was really hard. And so we were just praying and praying and praying. We're like, God, you have this trip. You know what you're doing, and we fully trust you with that. And so with that, I went to bed that night just feeling terrible, but trusting God that he was going to work a miracle, and wake up in the morning ready to go. And so we were just praying and praying that that would be the case. And I woke up the next day, no fever, feeling like a ton better. I can't even explain. Like, it was amazing. And so we were just praising God for that opportunity that he healed me. So I packed that morning and rushed to the school. And so he provided that way for me to go. And that just made each and every moment so special to me, just to really be thankful to God that I was even there. And with all those little kids, just those sweet and precious moments were just so amazing because I almost didn't get to go. So we were just praising God for that.
Can I run the clicker thing? What? Oh, just that picture. Oh, all right. So I'm going to talk about the construction thing that we did there, and I think Zane might have some stuff to say about it too. So basically, what we did there is they had just like the walls of a building set up, and then we had to form up and tie the rebar and pour the concrete for the roof, and which was quite a lot of work to do. When we got there, I wasn't sure that we were going to be able to get it all done in time, but I really realized we have a lot of leaders among us, and we all worked really hard, and were able to complete it. And it was really a different experience because I work construction in the summertime, and it's definitely a lot different than here. There's like no, we used all hammers and saws. There's no like power tools or anything like that, and it's really different experience and kind of humbling. So, thanks.
So one other thing that kind of went along with that, there were a couple local guys there that we got to work with, and so one of the challenges was kind of trying to communicate with them because they only spoke Spanish and they knew no English. We knew very little Spanish, so it was kind of cool to just try to communicate with them. We learned some words. They learned some English words. By the end of the week, I mean, we had a pretty good system down. We were communicating easily and everything was going smoothly, so that was really cool to see. No, are you going?
Oh, I can. Okay. So I'd say my favorite part definitely was working with the local help. This is cool. We don't speak the same language, and my Spanish is not great at all. But it was just cool to see how we could still communicate, and we teach each other a few words, and that was my favorite part about it. So.
Okay, so I and Jack and Noah, is Noah here? Yeah. Sorry, I didn't see him this morning. Okay. We're all going to talk about the kids that were down there, which was by far just my favorite part of the trip was just hanging out with the kids down there. I just want to start us off with a verse that I was just thinking about the whole time that I was down there. It's Matthew 19:14. Then Jesus said, "Leave the children alone and don't try to keep them from coming to me, because the kingdom of heaven is made of people like these." After putting his hands on them, he went on from there. And I was just overwhelmed by the importance of the kids down there. Just the fact that we were starting out, a lot of us were doing construction. Near the end, it kind of got weeded out to a few core people that were just core, because the cores were working most of the time. So just main people working there, and then the other people did VBS. But at the beginning, a lot of us were just doing construction, and then these like 4 kids just came up to this kind of window of the house. We were just kind of trying to level some dirt. And thanks to Senora Harrington, I was able to talk to some of the kids, and from there, they just kept coming because they heard that the white kids were giving piggyback rides to the other kids. And so that was, word spread pretty quickly, and soon we were having like soccer games in the street and stuff like that. And I just loved talking to the children because I just had the opportunity to be able to do that, which is crazy. And just the fact that God's heart was in them, and I just saw so much of his design in these little kids that just wanted to hang out and play games. So I'll leave it up to Jack.
Yeah, so I'll just be talking to you guys also about the kids at the construction site. While we were all there at the site, like, a lot of us weren't really good with construction. Like, we helped where we could, like carried stuff around and moved wood or whatever, but there were times when there just wasn't a ton of stuff to do. Like, the people that knew construction were working hard, and I don't know construction very well, so there were just a couple times when I was just kind of standing around, and that's when the opportunity was to kind of play with all these kids that were there. They were just kind of from the surrounding neighborhood, so it was really cool to play with them. Yeah, they loved, like Tate said, they really loved piggyback rides. That was kind of their favorite thing to do. So when we were getting wood, there was like a house down the street that we would go get the wood from. So we'd go get wood, bring it back, and then when we'd go back to the house, we'd give piggyback rides to kids. So we'd give piggyback rides, carry wood back, piggyback rides, carry wood back, and we did that for a very long time. The kids never got tired of it. Eventually, we got kind of tired of it. And like in the DR, yeah, they speak Spanish. So I was in Haiti, they can kind of understand French. So I was kind of looking forward to maybe I can maybe talk to some kids in French. But yeah, I couldn't do that. So I didn't know any Spanish. I couldn't talk to these kids. So I learned one phrase really quickly, and that was no más, no more, no more. No más, no más. So when I was tired, I would say to these kids jumping on my shoulders, I'm like, no más, no más, I'm tired. And they just kind of look up at me like, you're crazy. And then they'd run off to some other person, jump on their shoulders, try and get some more piggyback rides. Yeah, and then this one day I was just kind of standing around, not really much to help with, and this little guy comes up to me and holds up a sock. He's just looking at me holding up a sock, and I'm like, okay. And he says, baseball, baseball. I'm like, baseball, that's a sock, all right. But I just kind of nod with him and like, okay, all right, baseball. And then pretty soon he's folding it, turning it inside out, kind of working with it. And pretty soon he's got this sock turned into kind of like a hard little ball. And baseball, baseball. So then he runs and finds a stick, and we play baseball with his sock little ball and a stick. So that was really cool to see how they just kind of improvised with what they had. Yeah, and there was this one kid that I kind of got to know really well. His name was Jason, and he, like, every time we got to the site or whatever, he just kind of ran up to me and pointed, Jack, and I'd point back, Jason. So that was kind of cool just to kind of connect with one of the little guys there. But yeah, the thing that definitely stuck out to me the most was just the joy on all the kids' faces. Like, they have a lot less than we do, and it was just really cool to see how happy they were and just how they interacted with each other. It was just really cool. I was happy. There was one kid that we found there that spoke French, so I could talk to him a little bit, but I know Noah will tell you a little bit more about him.
Yeah, so my favorite part of the trip was the kids as well. Like, going into it, I was thinking, I'm so excited to play with these kids and just hang out with them, and it proved to be my favorite part. And one of the highlights at the construction site with the kids was there was this kid that Jack mentioned named Alex, and he came up and he started talking. I was like, hold up, this kid speaks French. I'm like, I can talk to somebody. And don't get me wrong, like, I love the Spanish part too. I mean, I don't speak Spanish, but I love the foreign language part. So I was trying to learn little phrases here and there, like no mas, and muy cansado was a big one. Like, I'm tired, because they always want on your back. But yeah, so I was just talking to Alex a little bit, carrying on a conversation. I learned his favorite color is orange. He has 2 sisters, and he wants to be a police officer someday. But then I was just standing there with him, and this little, like, 5 or 6-year-old kid came up, and this was all in French. I'm like, hey, Alex, is this your friend? And he's like, no, he's a dog, he's a dog. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay, I was like, I don't know what that kid did to you, but be nice, Alex, be nice to this kid. And so that just made me laugh, because Alex just had a smile plastered to his face the whole time, and then he just digs into this kid. I'm like, okay, yeah, be nice. But yeah, then I also made friends with a 12-year-old kid that spoke Spanish named Ornado, and he was my pal throughout the week. He always called me mi amigo, and I was like, mi amigo. But he, like, loved sunglasses. Like, the first couple of days, he'd, like, point at me and talk in Spanish. I'm like, I don't know what you're saying, but I don't speak Spanish. And eventually, he, like, just grabbed my sunglasses, and he would wear them on. He would put them on all the time. And then he was playing I think he was playing baseball, and the ball or a rock or something hit him, and he just totally shattered him. Like, one of the frames snapped off, and both lenses came out, and I was like, it's okay, don't worry about it. And he was just like crushed. Like he went and sat on a rock for like a half hour trying to fix it. And I went to somebody who spoke Spanish. I don't remember what the phrase is, but I was trying to say, it's okay, don't worry about it. Like, they're just sunglasses. But he was like crushed, and I think he was pretty worried that I was mad at him. So he just kept working at it and kept working at it. And then like 20 minutes later, I came back and I'm like, dude, it's okay. Like, don't worry about it. And then, yeah, he gets this big rock. Then he starts pounding at it. And then like, I'm like, okay, that's not going to do anything. But then I came back then 15 minutes later, and he had the lens back in, and he had pounded the frame back on. I was like, okay, this kid's going to be like an engineer someday or something. But yeah, so he totally fixed them, and they were good for another 2 days, and then they kind of fell apart, and then he fixed them again. So Ornado was my man. But yeah, the kids were so much fun, and like Jack said, just seeing their joy was priceless, especially when they have so little compared to us. But yeah, it was a really fun experience. Oh, and then the other thing is DR kids are so much tougher than American kids. Like, they'd be just talking, and then the next minute they're throwing punches and kicking each other, and it's like, what happened? But then one of their friends will come up, and they'll break up the fight, and they'll be like, they'll just be back to normal again, where an American kid would be laying on the ground crying. So it was a lot of fun, though. But yeah, I'm going to hand it off to Levi. I don't remember what he's talking about, but yeah.
I gotta talk about my girl. So I'm here to talk about this little girl that I met there, and I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden she fell asleep on Abby, and I was just standing there kind of talking to her at the time. I don't know what I was doing, but all of a sudden I was holding her. And if you know me, I hate kids. Not a kid guy. So I was just kind of standing there like, what do I do? And so like, I don't know, it felt like 20 minutes passed, but it was probably like 5. And like her brother or something, I'm guessing it was her brother, came. And so then he like took her from me, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, good time. But then like, so I started playing with him a little bit because I wasn't doing anything. And then the little girl came back, and then I probably held her for like, I don't know, a super long time. Like, my arm was dead. And so, I don't know, I got to hold this little girl, and it meant a lot to me because, I don't know, this was the first kid I guess I liked that was like littler than 5, I guess. So, but we didn't know her name because she just said whatever you said back to her, even Spanish, English, whatever. But then the second day, she was back again. Like, I probably hung out with her for like 3 days, like a lot in those 3 days. But the second day, she stepped on a nail. And, you know, their feet are like tough. It didn't even like bleed or anything. So, but she was crying, and I was like, I don't know what to do. So I just like picked her up, and she stopped crying. So I was like, yes. I hope it's this easy later. But I don't know, just getting to hang out with this girl, like even though she didn't like me as much, even though I spent like way more time with her than anyone else, she still picked Abby and other Abby over me. So I don't know. I don't know what I did wrong, but that's okay with me. So, but I guess that's kind of all I have.
Okay, so I will be talking about the VBS lessons. So we had 2 places that we went to. The first place was a church, sorry, and the second place was a public school. So the church that we went to, there was about like 200 kids, maybe-ish, around there. And so we had 2 skits. So the first day we did Abby's skit, which was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And then we did my skit the second day, which was Jesus feeding the 5,000 and Peter walking on water, which was really cool to do. And we also had the Creole skit. So VBS was absolutely crazy, like beyond imaginable. Just kids yelling, running around, screaming, and like the worst part was they wouldn't sit down, which we would yell siéntense at them so many times over and over and over again, which means sit down, and they, no matter what, would like not listen. So during the skits, it was very difficult because they wouldn't listen and they had a very hard time focusing. But at the end, we like asked review questions, and they were actually able to answer most of the questions, which was very surprising because you would think they weren't really listening. But when they would answer the questions, you kind of just had like a sense of relief, like wow, like we actually were able to get something across to them, and they were actually listening, surprisingly. And there was this one little boy that I remember very specifically at the church that we went to, and he just sat in the chair completely quiet and just limp. Like he just sat there and didn't do anything and wouldn't move. And so my friend Becca and I decided that we were going to try to help him out and like hang out with him and get him excited about VBS because all the other kids were very excited. And he would not do anything. So my friend would like pick him up and put her on her lap, and he would just like lay there and like wouldn't do anything and just had the saddest look on his face. So we tried absolutely everything we could. And I didn't think we really did anything or impacted him at all. But Emily, who like knew the area, she was telling us that his mom had died recently and that his dad moved away to Haiti. And just like feeling that like sense of sadness just like overwhelmed me, and it just like made me realize that these kids are actually going through a lot. And I heard that the second day when we left, he was actually crying a lot because he was really sad that we left, which kind of like struck me because I didn't think that we were actually doing anything or helping anyone in a way, or that we were getting our point across. But that made me feel a lot better. And so we also had crafts for them to do, which were really fun, but also crazy as well. And they would have googly eyes, and they love googly eyes, and they'd put them on their ears and on their foreheads and on their eyelids. They loved googly eyes. But yeah, that's kind of what we did for VBS.
So I'm going to talk about some of the games that we did with the kids at VBS. So when we went to the public school after the first 2 days of the church, there were probably, we walk in to the gate, and there's probably like, they have these big bleachers, concrete bleachers, and there's probably like 400 or 500 kids, like right there you can see, it's just packed in. And they are so loud, and you could not get them to be quiet. It was miserable. But, I mean, we may do because we just had a megaphone, and our translator would yell in it, but so then after the skits that we did, we split them up so half would stay in the building and they would do like the crafts that Natalie was talking about. And then we took the other half outside and onto like this basketball court kind of thing, which is the concrete pad that you can kind of see there. That's part of it. But we would, the idea for this game that we had was you would split the kids into 2 groups on like either side of the court, and you would line up like pool noodles that we brought down the middle, and you would count to 3. And whoever brought back the most like pool noodles to their side would win. That was the idea. But we barely got to we got to 2, and then the kids would just like sprint out. They grabbed the pool noodles, and instead of bringing them back, they just started like beating each other with them. They would run after each other, and they just would like, they were running in circles. The real game was us trying to get the pool noodles back to play another game. Like we could not, the kids would hide them in their shirts. So then eventually we caved, and we decided to combine their 2 loves, which is piggyback rides and beating each other with pool noodles. And we basically had like jousting where like 3 people would like put the kids on our backs with pool noodles, and we would like run around, and like I was getting chased by like, Nathan and Tate, and their kids were like mass pools. My kid didn't even have a pool noodle. So it was totally unfair. But so then so that was a lot of fun, but it was just cool to see the joy on the kids' faces. Like it totally didn't go to plan, but they were having fun. So, and then we got the chalk out, and they like, Natalie pulled the chalk out, and those kids, like, if you go to like a fish hatchery and you feed them like, that's what it was. So Natalie's like holding it up, and she's like yelling at him, and they're like mugging her. So then she just hands it off to Nathan because he's like, you know, a few inches taller, and he can hold it higher. Well, then they're tackling Nathan. So Nathan like tosses it to me, and then so we're like going back and forth, like tossing, and we're getting swarmed by these kids. We would have to we'd like fake pass, and they'd all like turn around, but it was crazy. We didn't see the chalk again after like once you dropped like piece, it was gone. And then on the last day we did the BBS kind of by this open field and this old like basketball court which actually had hoops on it. And so we played soccer for a while, and then somebody got a basketball out, and all of us that play basketball were like, oh, they play basketball here? Let's play some basketball. So then we get to the court, and then they wanted to play 3-on-3, and Jack and Noah and I were the first 3 to play, and Peyton got in later. But we got to play basketball with some of these older guys that play on like rec leagues and stuff that they have there. So that was really fun because we got to interact with some older teenage guys and college guys that we didn't get to see much the rest of the week at VBS and stuff. So it was cool to just have a lot of fun and play some basketball with them, and we won. So.
Okay, so I'm going to be kind of continuing what Ethan was talking about. And my favorite day of the VBS was the last day. It was very hectic. We were in a smaller room that day, and we still had a ton of kids. But once we got through that, we kind of just sent them out in a field, and they were just kind of going at it. And me and Abigail were kind of just hanging out by the building, and we were looking through the bag, and we found a baseball bat and a wiffle ball. And we're like, oh, let's go start a baseball game. And we had like 1 or 2 kids with us, and then as soon as they saw what we were doing, kids just come flooding in, and they just loved it so much. And it kind of like caught me off guard how excited they were with just a bat and a wiffle ball. Like, it was just so much fun for them because they don't get to play with like actual bats and balls usually. And so we were playing that for a little bit, and then another kind of fun thing was that this little girl comes over and grabs my hand and kind of points, and she's like, a key. And I go over there, and like Tori, Anna, Natalie, we're all sitting down, and they sit me down, and they start to take out my hair, and they started to braid my hair, and they just were so intrigued by our hair. And it was a little painful because they pulled a little hard, but it was just so cool because they were so intrigued by that. So that was kind of like one of my highlights from the trip. Another thing that I wasn't prepared for was how hard it was going to be to leave, especially with the kids at the construction site and the little girl that Levi talked about. Even though like we couldn't communicate with her at all because she just repeated everything you said. You'd ask her what her name was, and she'd just go, "What's your name?" So, but I felt a connection with her even though she wasn't talking to me. And so I was really sad because the day of the construction site, when we were pouring concrete, we left pretty quickly, and I didn't get to see her. And then the next morning before we headed out, we decided just to go back and look at our finished product. And I was like, well, maybe she'll be there. And we walk up, and she wasn't there. And then in just a second, she just comes out of this house and just starts running towards me. And I held out my arms, and she just like hugs onto me so tight. And that was just so sweet and so awesome that I got to say goodbye to her. So, yeah. I don't know who's next.
All right, so I get to talk about, I get the privilege of talking about church in the Dominican Republic. First of all, it was just awesome. We showed up, and to be completely honest, I was a little bit worried just because it was going to be different. And Dr. Chris was telling us that in Haiti, the church services are like 2.5 hours, and they are like not really planned out. It's like people like kind of just stand up, share what God has done in their life or whatever, and people decide on songs to sing, and it's just and then when it's done, it's done. And so me being my selfish self was like, oh, it's going to take too much time, whatever. But we showed up there, and I noticed on the wall, it was like the church is like split up into like parts. I was like, because I can read Spanish, and obviously the word parte is part, so wow me. But anyway, it was like part 1, part 2, part 3, whatever. And we got there for like the last part, I think. And I'm not sure if that was like socially acceptable or not, but we did, so it was fine. But anyway, we got there, and we showed up, and it was really cool, like, because there was obviously like there's a lot of people talking, and like a lot of community. And this one guy was maybe doing like a little mini sermon devotional or something. I don't know if it was Sunday school or whatever. But then after that was done, immediately we went into. I think the pastor started, and he came up and did a little lesson, and then we immediately went up into like worship and stuff. And kind of how the service would go is it would go like the pastor would say something, and then it would be a song, and the pastor would say something, and there was a song. And obviously none of us knew the songs, and so we're kind of all just like, But one of the coolest parts that I think all of us probably remember was there was this lady that came up, and she started she was just praying, and I'm not sure if she was like scheduled to pray or whatever. She was just kind of led by God to come up there, but she was like hardcore, like prayer, and it was, I think for some of us, it was maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but it was really cool because Mr. Faldy, the guy that we go on these missions trip with, he said that, like, he translated what she said, and he was saying that what she said was like talking about how all these idols, there's so many idols in the world, and these idols claim they have legs or have arms or whatever, but our God really has those things and can really do certain things. And so it was just cool to not only hear this lady, preach, or I'm sorry, not preach, pray like intensely, but also hear the translation and just what she was talking about was really cool. And then we awkwardly went up there, all of us as a group, and sang like the Hillsong, "So Will I," like the 1 billion times or whatever. And that was fun. And I could tell like nobody knew the song, but it was cool because you could just tell they were happy we were there. It was just an awesome experience, just kind of a culture shock, I guess, in a way. But yeah, and then Mr. Prawl gave just an awesome message, and it was just a great time. So.
So I'm talking to you guys about the day that we originally had planned as extra. We ended up getting about 4 extra days, but the original day that we planned as extra was in the DR, and we got to kind of go do some touristy stuff and go to the beach and whatnot. So we start off the day, we get on this bus that said Korean travel. So I was like, this is kind of weird because we're not in Korea at all. So we get on this bus and we drive. We were staying in a town outside of the capital, Santo Domingo. So we drive to Santo Domingo, and we come up upon this gigantic building. I'm like, what in the world is that? And it was a monument built for Christopher Columbus because he did a lot of stuff there in the DR. And it's just gigantic. There's tons of stairs leading up to it and everything. And I think a couple guys turned on Rocky and ran up the stairs, so that was interesting. And then we get to the top, and there's this, like, it's extremely tall, and there's a gigantic doorway. But there's this little, like, it's kind of like that little podium thing over there. And we turn around the podium, there's this little tiny dog. And he probably should have been about, I don't know, like 50 pounds, and he was probably about 10 pounds. So they fed him some beef jerky, and he really liked the beef jerky until about 10 minutes later when it came back out of his mouth. But they named him Christopher, Sawyer did, and so we're not really sure how Christopher's doing. He may be alive, he may not be, but we hope the best for Christopher. And so we go on this tour of Santo Domingo, and you can see on the left side there's that big white thing, and I honestly can't tell you what that is, but it was built for Christopher Columbus because they really like him, and it was honestly really cool. It was built of like marble and stuff. And then in the middle, you can kind of see underneath that little doorway thing, there's just a box. And we came upon it, and I was like, this looks like the Ark of the Covenant. And I was like, this could be really cool. So I touch it, but obviously it wasn't the Ark of the Covenant because I'm still standing here today. But it was really cool. We kind of guessed that it might have had some of Christopher Columbus's remains in it because the whole monument's kind of like a tomb, supposedly. But then one other fact that I didn't know is at the very top of this monument thing, they light up a cross every now and then. And somebody's actually telling my dad this, and he told me, but you can see it for like miles all across Santo Domingo. There's this gigantic cross that's on top of this building. And she said that they can't light it up all the time because it's extremely expensive with all the lights and everything. But I thought that was kind of a cool thing. And then throughout the entire museum, you can walk through and see the different countries' contributions to the DR and what they've done for the DR and some historical stuff about the DR. Like there was some like old warrior uniforms in there. That was pretty cool. And then you can see on the right bottom, that's the picture of the monument altogether. It's just gigantic. So that was pretty neat. And then we get back in the bus and drive a little ways, and we go to this place that was called Christopher Columbus's house. And it had, honestly, I didn't really learn a whole lot from that tour because, I don't know, it was like super short, and I couldn't really hear the guy very well. But there was all sorts of like different, the way that the people there dressed and everything up until a certain time, and there were 6 generations of Christopher Columbus's family that lived in that house. And then we go to this other museum that has a bunch of famous people's graves in it, and like they were literally like there, like concrete graves with people's dead bodies in them. So that was kind of interesting. But then we walk in, and there's this little flame that's lit up at the end of this hallway, and the guy tells us that since the time that this museum opened, like 200 years ago or whatever, that this flame has been continually on. And then we had one of our interpreters, Samuel, and he spoke the language and everything, and he was like, guys, I was here 5 months ago, and that flame was not on. So we were like, well, that's interesting. And so we obviously knew that maybe that part was not true, but the rest of it was pretty neat and everything, and it had like all former presidents buried there, and that was pretty cool. And then we went to the beach after that. So we get back on the bus, go to the beach, and there's tons of people on this beach. There's tons of umbrellas, picnic tables, all sorts of stuff. And as soon as we find a place to sit, all these vendors come towards us because they're like, ooh, the white people have money. This is going to be good. So they all come towards us. They've got necklaces, paintings, coconuts, all sorts of stuff. And as soon, like, you would go up to one guy, and he'd be selling you a bracelet and a necklace for $2. And then you'd be like, oh, that's too much. And then you go to the other guy, and he'd want to sell you to the same exact thing for $5. You're like, that doesn't work. I can't do that. And you just go basically go back and forth and tell one person that the other guy was going to undersell him, and that the other guy was going to undersell him. So they eventually kind of knocked their prices down, and we bartered. And actually, the Faldies, who is the family that we were there with, their daughters were going hardcore on these guys. Like, I thought they were going to, like, I don't know. They were getting good deals somehow because they were bartering so much, but they bartered for like 20 minutes. It was a really long time. And that was kind of nice about that, is that you could barter everything down to where you could pay for it. And they were like, oh, hey, this is good because it's American money. So that was nice. And then that evening, actually, so the entire trip, as soon as we got there, my guitar was not there. So that was interesting because we were planning on doing all these worship songs and everything, and my guitar did not show up in the DR. And then the very last day, it shows up. And so we decided to have a worship service that night and everything. And I thought, oh, we're just going to do like 2 songs. That'll be good. And then Mr. Faldi will share a message or something. And we ended up doing like 10 songs. And to be honest, I wasn't really ready for it because I kind of had a cold. And I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. But it ended up being one of the coolest things that I experienced on that trip, just because you really felt God's presence in that little area that we were in. And singing just is so powerful to me. And it was really just a really neat experience just to be able to sing with everybody and praise God. So, yeah.
All right, I'm going to be talking about the dental ministry. And basically, I'm going to start from the beginning of this whole journey, I guess. But like the very first day, like we were having church and everything and whatnot, and I'm like, gosh, I'm a little bummed that Nathan and Ethan aren't here. We had like sketchy beef at a restaurant the other day, and they were on the toilet the whole time. And we're like, oh gosh, why aren't they here? So I had to figure out what I was doing for that day. So I'm like, Mr. Chris has the dental ministry. I'll go do that, even though I don't really like, I don't know, I get a little grossed out by teeth every once in a while. But I go out to Mr. Chris's little area that he's setting up and everything, and he's like, we need a spit jug. And I'm like, all right. And I walk out on the street. I find a jug on the ground. I'm like, oh, that's a spit jug. I'll just pick it up and use it. And then we use that, and I become the spit boy for the rest of the day. Like, if they need to spit, I'm just like, all right, here you go. And yeah, it was just a really cool thing to see how many people got served by Mr. Chris's dental ministry. We got so many teeth pulled. It was nuts. Like, I don't even, like, trillions upon billions of teeth got pulled. And, like, it's just, we got that pain, like, that pain that they have in their teeth just taken away from them. And they don't get that luxury all the time. And it's just super awesome to see that. And with, like, helping out and stuff in there, I got to meet Mike Allsteele. I got to know him a little bit better. And he was talking about his cool ministries that he has on the side. And he's like, I have this ministry that's based on when David and his mighty men are in the caves. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is awesome. And it was just really cool because we were just pulling out teeth and we were just talking about real life stuff, and it's just super duper awesome. And then by the end of it, we got all these people served with their teeth pulled. They said, we're bringing in motorcycles. I'm like, yes, motorcycles. I didn't think we were gonna get motorcycles this trip, but we got them, and I was really, really excited to get them. And this was just a really good start off to my trip because it started this theme of getting to know all these lovely people. And just, I didn't know most of them because most of the seniors, I'm like, I don't know them too well, but I got to know each individually a lot better. And it was a fun experience.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of talk about
not really the theme of our trip, but probably the biggest takeaway of our trip. So probably most of you guys probably know that I've been to Haiti multiple times. I'd been to Haiti 3 times, and then this was my first time in the DR. So since I was a freshman, I've been going with Miss Prawl on these teams, and that has been such a blessing to me. But one of the things is like going to Haiti, even though everything is different and you don't ever really know what to expect, you kind of know what to expect in a way. It's really oxymoronic. But so I kind of had this idea of being in the Haiti routine, and then I found out we were going to the DR. And honestly, I was really disappointed. It was really hard because I was looking forward just to going back and getting to see a lot of the same kids, like talk to people who I'd built relationships with. And so when I found out we weren't going there, I was heartbroken. And so going into the trip then, I was like, well, all right, let's go. It's not Haiti, but let's go. So I was like, just kind of throughout the whole week, I really tried to have a good attitude, but in the back of my mind, I always had that it's not Haiti kind of mentality, which honestly wasn't the best. But it was a really good trip, and it was definitely different than Haiti for sure. The kids, like they said, were crazy, absolutely. There's one kid, there's not a picture on it, but on the last day of VBS, he was trying to run places, and I just grabbed him. Like, we were talking, and Chris Kazi was like, sometimes when you're angry, you just have to grab them and, like, just like, oh, I love you, and, like, squeeze the love. And so I grabbed him, and I'm like, I love you. And he's, like, fighting. He's putting his, like, feet up on pillars, trying to, like, push me over. And I'm like, this is so great. So that kind of, like, our theme then was embracing the change. That was literal embracing the change. But that was the biggest thing that I learned, and that was, I don't know if it was the very last night we were there or the night that we did our, like, worship night, but Kevin Faldy was just talking about, it doesn't matter what happens in life. There's always going to be changes, whether it's good or bad. And that really hit me because I was like, whoa, he's right. And I don't like change a lot. I like things to be a certain way. So that really hit me, and that has stuck with me a lot, just being willing to embrace whatever comes with a good attitude. Because no matter like whether you like it or not, there will be changes. I mean, seniors going to college, even if you're an 8th grader going to high school, that's a really big change. And so all these changes are going to happen in life, but you just have to go with it and trust God. And I'm going to read one of my favorite verses. It comes from 2 Timothy. It says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind." And that just reaffirms that no matter what you go through, even if you don't like it, God's got your back. So I was so blessed to have gone all these years with a new team every time. This team was definitely the biggest, but somehow we managed to get along all together, and so that was just a good blessing.
It was an awesome privilege for me to go on this trip. I am proud to say that I got my doctorate in dentistry in the DR. I pulled 10 teeth, so I am now a dentist, and I can take care of you. The first patient that Dr. Chris brought to me and said, "Mike, I think this will be a good one for you." I sit down, I put gloves on, the guy sits back, he leans back, he opens his mouth, and I kid you not, he has one tooth in his mouth. That's it, just one big old horse tooth in the front. And I look at Brian, I said, "You want me to pull his one last tooth?" "Pull it." Okay, so I pulled this guy's one last tooth, so that poor guy is gumming his food for the rest of his life because I pulled his last tooth. But it was an awesome ministry. It was great being there with Logan. One of the thoughts of unity, we saw that with all of the students throughout the trip. It was a powerful, powerful thing. I have one example of where I stepped out of unity. Logan and I decided that we were done with the games at VBS and we're going to go back to the construction site. And I thought, I'm pretty good with directions. I know where the construction site is. Logan, we got this. Let's go. Let's take off. I told Miss Prawl, I know where we're going. I can see the water tower. We'll be there. I'll meet you at the construction site. And she said, "I think it's through those tires over there is where we came." I said, No. It's across that field. That's where you go. Needless to say, 15 minutes later, Logan and I are helplessly lost somewhere in the DR. We have no idea where we are. All the corners look the same. And so the lesson became, as we finally came back to the VBS area with our tail between our legs, is trust your adults. Stay in unity. Trust them. They know what's better. Lastly, I'll say this. I had the privilege as a father to watch my daughter fully alive in ministry. And I got to watch Tori love on these kids. I got to watch Tori hold these kids. And I got to have the fullness, I can't look at her right now because you know what'll happen. I had the fullness of my heart come alive when I got to see my daughter fully alive loving on these kids. And I thought this has to be a glimpse of what the Heavenly Father does looking at you. Has to be a glimpse of what the Heavenly Father does when he says he delights in you. I got just a small taste of that, and I loved it. So with that, it was an awesome privilege, and I love being a part of this.
Thank you, brother. I'm thankful to have a daughter, Miss Brawl. She's an adventurous soul. And thankful to have spent the time with these young folks. I think I can go down the line from one end to the other and name each one. One is missing today, right? Correct? Yeah, see? But it was a wonderful time, and these guys just were very impressive. I just really, really enjoyed spending time with them, visiting with different ones of them, some more than others. On the construction site, I've done that kind of thing most all my life. And so I had a choice of trying to communicate with Dominicans that spoke another language, or young people that didn't always fully understand what I was trying to share with them in the construction site. But we did all right. We got it done. Thank the Lord. It was a good blessing and a good to see it accomplished. And I don't know, they're so full of energy, they can push wheelbarrows and throw the wheelbarrow down and have two kids jump on them, run down the street and back, grab the wheelbarrow and start over again. I don't do that no more. Maybe one time, but not anymore. So, but I am grateful you let the old guy come along. Thank you very much. It was very, very enjoyable. I was thinking this morning as I was reading in Ezekiel chapter 14, Ezekiel is a contemporary with Daniel and also Jeremiah. But Ezekiel mentions that the wickedness of the nation of Judah were it Noah, Daniel, and Job, only those three, their righteousness would be able to deliver them. And Noah is a long time prior to Ezekiel's writing, and Daniel. Job is a long time prior to that. The one who is contemporary is Daniel. And he says, and he mentions him amongst the other three. So whatever Daniel had as a young fella, because he's probably taken to Babylon at 14, 15 years old, was so impressive and so outstanding that when Ezekiel writes, he says, Noah, Daniel, and Job. He mentions two old guys that are history, long time dead and gone, and one who's his own contemporary. And I'm thinking of these young folks and what a blessing it was. And I don't recall ever seeing, in my observation, any crossword transpiring between any of them or any attitude that was less than it should be. Just a blessing, just all the way through. Do you know, Luke chapter 9, verse 62 says, no man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom. And these young folks, you young folks, you have put your hand to the plow, I trust. You've trusted the Lord Jesus Christ. You have your hand on the plow. But in that same chapter that I mentioned a moment ago about Daniel, Daniel also, chapter 1, resolved in his heart. And by the end of the chapter, it says, till the year of Cyprus, which is 80 plus years. So as a young fella, he's got his hand on the plow. As a teenager, old hand on the plow, Daniel. middle age, mid-20s, starting a family, got his hand on the plow. Growing up, middle life crisis or whatever they call it. Where's Daniel? Hand on the plow. Where is he when he's an old man? Hand on the plow. Never let go of the plow, never look back. It is a wonderful thing to have spent this time with these young people, but I probably aren't going to see you 40 years from now. I'll be gone. It'll be history. But if the Lord tarries, keep your hand on the plow, okay? Keep your hand on the plow. Don't let off. Thank you. Jennifer.
Thank you all, because all of you here, you have contributed to being the ones who stood behind us, who supported us, and we can't make these trips, whether to Minneapolis or to other countries, without you. I'm just going to pray quickly, and then I'll let you head to class. Father God, we thank you that you are good, and we thank you that your name is powerful. We thank you that you give us purpose, and we thank you that you are the one that we can put in front of us and say, you are the perfect one. And this is the thing around which we can center our lives. And as we finish out this school year, God, help us to embrace knowing you better, whether it's through missions trips, whether it's through the chance to serve in our churches in the coming weeks, or whether it's summer VBS that we can get involved in. Help us to lift your name high. We ask that you would go before us today. In your name we pray. Amen.